You're listening to The Justin Herman Show, where every episode he has conversations with interesting people. Here is your host, Justin Herman.
So here we go, the very beginning, episode number 1 of The Justin Herman Show. I am Justin Herman. I'm really excited for this. I'm gearing up to leave for a few days to Florida. Never been to Florida before. Really excited about that. And I'm pumped because as I'm getting ready to fly out, these episodes will start going live. This has been a really fun process. I got a few episodes in the bank. I'm ready to roll them out over the next few weeks and months. And to have the first 3 episodes be with, starting with Jack Carr, who has just been tremendous. Can't tell you how many times I had something come up and I had to reschedule, and he had something come up and had to reschedule, but then we finally got it figured out. And we were able to have a really great conversation, not just about his book and what he did with the Navy SEALs, which is absolutely incredible, but he has a son with special needs just like I do, and we got to talk about that for a while, which I really, really loved, really enjoyed. He's a great dad. Other than defending our freedom and writing incredible novels, he's a great husband, great father, and that's really, really cool because there's a lot of things I think he could rest on and be like, oh my gosh, look at what I've done and look what I've accomplished. He does not do that. He has a priority in his life, a new mission. He talks about that. I'm going to spoil it for you. It's all about his kid, which I love. So we're going to jump in. Episode 1, Jack Carr. If you like it, take a second, go over, leave a rating, leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Help us out. Share this with a friend and let them know that it's a conversation with a really interesting person, because that's what this podcast is all about. So here we go with Jack Carr. Jack, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for making time.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great talking to you too. It's been a while. I had you on a podcast a long time ago, and we were talking about your book and talking about just some leadership stuff. And since then, you have announced the 3rd book in your series. Could you just talk a little bit about that to fill people in who might not be familiar?
That's right. So True Believer came out this summer. It was supposed to come out in April 2nd, but the Department of Defense took 7 months to do their pre-publication and security review. So we had to push that date to July. So it came out at the end of July, and then I announced Savage Son, which is book 3, just a couple weeks later. So that's really been in the works for a while now, and it's the book that I've always wanted to write since I was a little kid. I read The Most Dangerous Game, which is a short story by Richard Connell. He wrote it in 1924. Read that in 6th grade. I think people still read that in middle school, but I always wanted to write a modern rendition of that story. And it's really a story of hunter versus hunted. Many books, movies have been written with that theme since its publication back in 1924. But I always knew that one day I'd write that novel. And as I was picking what to start this series with, it was obvious to me that it had to start with the terminal list. I wrote about 6 or 7 different ideas down, and I chose the terminal list because that had that age-old theme of revenge, and that always resonated with me from when I was a little kid. I loved movies that had that theme, books that had that theme, so that one just jumped out as, hey, this is the place to start. But on the heels of True Believer, on the heels of the 2nd novel, it's the perfect time to dive into that theme of hunter versus hunted, and that's the premise really for the 3rd novel, Savage Son. And the theme of that novel is really exploring the dark side of man.
And you have such an overall interesting life. You Navy SEAL, you consult with the show SEAL Team. I don't know if you still do that, but I know you did that for a while. And then obviously,
I'm kind of a fan, and they asked me to do the host the premiere for season 2. So I got to do that. I already knew a couple guys on the show. I know one of the guys that created it and is one of the producers, Mark Owen, who wrote the books No Easy Day and No Hero. Yep. And so I have a connection to the show. So I guess I'm an unofficial advisor, and from time to time I'll talk to them and answer questions and that sort of thing. So really just a fan who gets to tries to help out.
And you were active duty Navy SEAL for how long? How many years?
20 years. Those first few months are, you're not a SEAL yet. You're in boot camp, and then you go to your A school, which is like an MOS for the other services out there. So military occupational specialty. And then you go to BUDS, and then you go to your team. So, but really you're on that track the entire time.
I have a buddy.
20 year time in the military.
I have a buddy, a former student, and he is in the Navy, just joined the Navy, 19, 20 years old. He's stationed in Japan right now. And he wants to be a Navy SEAL. He talks about it a bunch, and I'm like, well, I know Jack Carr. I'm going to have him on my show. I'm going to be interviewing him, talking about some stuff. And he is a massive fan. Has read your books, and was extremely jealous of me, which I get that a lot from him, probably just because I'm older and have more money and can do stuff. And he's a kid still, but he wants that to be his future as well. It is not an easy road to get there. Quickly, just talk about, to kind of set the scene for what I know we're going to get to soon. What's the difficulty in becoming a Navy SEAL? Like, what was that road like for you? How hard was it? Or is it just, like a very simple thing that anyone could do?
Right. So everybody takes a different path getting there. So I'll get to once you show up and walk through those doors and set foot on the grinder in Coronado, California at the Naval Special Warfare Center, which is the home of BUDS, SEAL training, basic underwater demolition SEAL training. But everybody takes a different path to get there. Once you get there, you jump into the mix and just devote yourself to it and get it done. But my path was, I guess I'm fortunate in that I early age, and I think that's because my grandfather was in World War II. He was killed off Okinawa in 1945, and I grew up with the idea of him as my hero. And I had the silk maps they used to give aviators back then. He flew the Corsair, which is a plane that the wings fold up so they could fit him on carriers. I mean, an iconic aircraft, and it for those that remember, it was Pappy Boynton's plane and was part of that show Black Sheep Squadron that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. So I was watching that, and I had his medals and pictures of his squadron and his aviator wings and that sort of thing. He was a Marine aviator, but so I knew I was going down that road, and I just didn't know what exactly until I found out what SEALs were. And I found out what SEALs were by watching an old black and white film, and not even the whole thing, just between commercial breaks during Sunday football with my dad, I got to run up to the TV and switch it to the one outlier channel that we used to have back then, because it was ABC, CBS, NBC, and then that one outlier that on Sundays always seemed to be playing some black and white war movie. And during commercials, my dad would look at his watch and say, go, and I was the remote control, so I ran up to the TV and turned it to that outlier channel and got to watch it for a couple minutes until that clock ticked down, and he told me to switch it back. And one of those films showed these guys swimming up over the beach and putting explosives on these obstacles in advance of a conventional forced landing. So I asked my dad who they were, and he told me to go ask my mom. So she was a librarian, and we went down to the local library, did some research, and that's where I found out what SEALs were. So I said, okay, this is my path, because I think it was something that I read, and you could read everything back in the early 80s. You couldn't, no internet. You couldn't just spend the rest of your life going down rabbit holes on the internet. You could read everything in about an hour. So the takeaway was that, hey, these guys are some of the toughest special operations forces in the world, and the training is some of the toughest ever devised by a modern military. So I heard those two things, read those, and said, okay, this is what I'm doing. So at age 7, I was in. So I knew my path, and I prepared from age 7, and really probably before then, to go to BUDS and to go into the military. So I was always training, always focused on that goal. And so when I got there, I guess I was about as prepared as you could possibly be. Now, a lot of people prepare, and then a lot of people quit right away. But for me, just knowing that I was going to do it for so long, and having told my friends since I was 7 years old, and that I was going to do that, there was no way I could ever show my face at home again if I quit. So there was really no quitting. And then the other thing that got me through that training was thinking about all the people that had sacrificed their lives so I could have the freedom to pursue that path. Thought about the guys that were storming the beaches at Normandy, Iwo Jima. Thought about people really from the inception of this country until today that gave their lives so I could be there on that beach in sunny Southern California, doing my push-ups and sit-ups and runs and swims, and follow my dream of being a SEAL. So that really also put things in perspective and helped me get through, I think.
And this whole time, you had a family, you accumulated your family along the way through this whole journey?
Yeah, accumulated is a strange word for it, but yes, I accumulated them as I went. I got married after my first deployment, and that was before September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we didn't know really what we were going to do before September 11th. It was like, how long are we going to stay in? There's nothing really going on right now in the world. Maybe we'll get out, maybe we'll go to, whatever, go to another government agency or something like that. I was really looking for the fight.
Yeah.
And before September 11th, we all thought we were going to graduate buds, show up at our first SEAL teams and get issued pagers. The golden Connex boxes would open and we'd get all this amazing gear.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be at the local SEAL bar having drinks. The pagers would go off.
Yeah.
We'd go off, save the world, and then come back.
That's what I envisioned. That's what, as a kid, I would think that's what
we all thought.
You're doing, right? It's amazing.
And that wasn't really the case. We showed up at our first SEAL teams and, across the quarterdeck, and pretty much they handed us mops and said, go clean that bathroom, go paint that wall, go change that light bulb. And you did new guy stuff. So yeah, your job before September 11th was really to prepare for war. And up until September 11th, we had not been in sustained combat really since Vietnam. So we took those tactics that worked in the jungles of Vietnam, and for training, we dropped them into urban combat environments. We dropped them into desert environments. We dropped them into mountainous environments. And it was only really after September 11th that we engaged in sustained combat where we could adapt effectively to those new environments. We had flashpoints. We had Desert One, Grenada, Panama, Mogadishu, but really the flash outliers, and we didn't really adapt our tactics, techniques, and procedures based on those flashpoints. So before September 11th, your job was to prepare and be ready. And then September 11th happened, and things changed. And after that, there was no way I was getting out to do anything else.
So you're doing active duty, you're training, you're having kids. How many kids do you have?
So we have 3 little ones, and the first one was born in 2005. So September 11th hit. So I'm married, got married in 2000, and a year later, essentially, September 11th hits. And back then, we were all learning something new. It was a new paradigm, a new model, both for how we trained and deployed, and also for a different model for terrorism. Up until that point, hijackings had been a whole different deal with different objectives. So really, everything did change on that sunny Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
But we were all going through it together back then. We're all your guys in your platoon, your senior level leadership, politicians, the country, everyone was in this together. Now you come in, and now we've been at it for, it's creeping up on 20 years now. So as a new guy coming in today, you're stepping into that model. It's been established. You know what you're going to be doing on deployments. Essentially, you're going to be, you're not figuring out with your family, essentially. But back then, 2001, and we were all in it together. And I think that really was a special time to be in special operations, and for the operator and for the families that were in it together. We were all part of this team. So yeah, first baby came along in 2005, followed by another one in 2008, and then 2010. So 3 little ones. And of all my deployments, so they were all around for at least one deployment. Little one doesn't remember. He's 9 now, but he doesn't even remember me going away. But my daughter does. She's the oldest, and we used to frame it as, all right, Dad's going on a little trip, and those were the training ones. We go up to the desert for a month to train. You go to somewhere else, do some mountain stuff for 2 weeks or whatever it was, then come back. Those are the little trips, and then the deployments. That was the big trip. But for her, all of our peers, all of our friends were in that same boat, so it wasn't abnormal to disappear for 7 months at a time, 6 months at a time. Wasn't abnormal to go away for a month to train, come back for a few days, and then leave again for 2 weeks. That was our normal. But as she got older, and then when I retired in 2016, I think it would have been a lot tougher to do that job as she got older, as kids get older in general, because they start to realize that sometimes the operators don't come home, and they see you getting ready for a funeral or putting on your blues to go to a memorial service, that sort of thing. So I think as they get older and realize what's really going on, it gets a lot harder, I would think.
Yeah, that has to be really difficult, because if they're young, you don't go into detail with the risk of I'm going away for 7 months and I might not come back, obviously. Right. Once they realized that, like, was it a conversation you guys had? Was it they realized something and then start asking you questions? Like, what was that like?
Well, she was so young by the time I did my last deployment that it still hadn't really registered. It was probably starting to register then. And if I stayed in and did another one, then it definitely would have registered. But by that last one, she was still at the age where it didn't quite register that, or if it did, it didn't quite have the gravity of being older and really being able to process what all that meant. So I think timing wise, it was for us anyway, for our family, it was a good 20 years. The kids came along at the right times. Of course, my wife had to deal with all the home front stuff, not just when I was gone, but when we're training here in the States too. I mean, she had to deal with all of it. And, people think of your deployments as being the hard times, and that's to a certain extent that's true. But on the other side, when you're deployed, man, you are gone, and you are solely 100% focused on the task at hand. There are no distractions. You know that you're not going to go home after the day of training, and there's going to be a to-do list there. Or you're going to have to like pay a couple bills, or no, there's none of that because you're not going home. You are 100% focused on that task at hand. You're downrange and you're getting it done, and you're with your best friends on the planet to your right and left, your teammates. So it's definitely a lot harder for those that get left behind at home that are wondering what you're doing downrange. They see something go across the ticker on the bottom of the cable news saying that a vehicle hit an IED in Ramadi, and they know that you're there, and then they're waiting, and then it says Special Operations Forces, and then hours later, then it gets more specific as to who that was. So they have to deal with all that. We don't, and it's a lot tougher for those left behind.
It takes. I feel like it'll probably take a real special wife to be able to do that. Has there ever been like tension points in your marriage because of it that you overcame? Was it always just kind of a work in progress and everybody was just being flexible? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I think because we were all so close and thrown into this thing after September 11th, that it really did. It kind of was make or break, I guess you'd say. And for us, it made us a stronger family, a stronger team, I guess you could say, husband-wife team. I mean, but yeah, there are definitely stressors, and the divorce rate in the SEAL teams and in special operations is very high. And for whatever reason, I guess we're outliers. So we made it through all that. But yeah, it's definitely not because of me. It's definitely because of my wife and how strong she is, and how she was able to deal with me being away, and to making the decision at some point along the way, like, hey, I'm all in on this too. And the country was attacked. The country needs us, and my husband stepped up to do it. That means I stepped up to do it, and we're in this together. Let's get it done. So that's I guess I should ask her sometime, but I'm guessing that's she had to make that decision at some point. Hey, is this because the life before September 11th and after was vastly different, and that's why I kind of framed this in those terms. It was, you didn't know you were getting into what happened after September 11th before that, if that makes sense. Yeah. So after September 11th, you had to make that decision. Is this a life that I want? With a husband going down range, constantly training, constantly focused on that mission, on that job, because that's what he owes the guys that he's taking down range. And that's how I looked at it. Like the pendulum was definitely on the side of the team. And it has to be, because the decisions you make down range under fire, you owe it to the guys you're taking down range, to their families, to the mission, to the country, to be solely focused on that task, and to make yourself the best combat leader you can possibly be, so that you can make those good decisions under fire when it counts. So my wife knew that that's where the pendulum was going to be, and it was going to be there for the entire time that I was in the SEAL teams. Now that I'm out, it's swung back the other way towards family. But these days I need a couple of reminders now and again, like, hey, you're not in the SEAL teams anymore. You're not going to Iraq and Afghanistan. You don't get back to that email, or you don't do this or whatever. No one's life is hanging in the balance. And I need to remind myself of that quite often, because when I go in on something, I go all in. And this new chapter in life, in publishing, I'm all in on it. And so just like on the battlefield, when you're looking for emerging opportunities, same thing. here in publishing. It's not what I thought it was going to be from the business standpoint. I didn't even know there was a business standpoint. I thought all you did was write and send it into New York, and that was it. I had no idea about Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I didn't know anything about marketing or branding or co-branding or building a brand. I had no idea about any of that, and I never thought about any of that. All I thought about was the writing. And then in the lead up to the publication of the first book, then my publicist is like, you need to get a website. And I'm like, well, I guess that makes sense. Okay, how do I do that? And then you need to maybe get on this social media stuff. I'm like, really? Okay, I guess I need to look into that. But then a couple weeks before the book published, I was like, okay, I see what's going on here. This is an entrepreneurial venture. It's not just writing. Writing is what I love to do, and that's why I'm doing this. But there's a business side to it, and you have to do that. And you should treat this as a startup. And so that's how I looked at it. I looked at it as taking advantage of emerging opportunities, just like I used to do on the battlefield. But now I'm looking at it in the publishing space, and I'm learning, and I love learning new things. And I'm learning about all those things that we just talked about: the marketing, the branding, and the co-branding, and building a brand, and all the things, all the business side of it. And because that's what I owe my family for going along on this journey with me. It's what I owe my publisher for taking a risk on me. But at the same time, no one's life hangs in the balance here. Yeah. And so I really have to keep that in mind and let the pendulum swim back towards the family, because they deserve it after what they put up with for the last 20 years.
Well, I know one of your kids, I've heard you talk about it before. One of your kids has an interest. What's the way I want to say it? They have a story of how their life and Ross Perot's life intersected, and very few people can say that. Can you kind of unpack for us quickly the story of your son?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our middle child, he was born when I started what's called a Platoon Commander tour. So it's a pretty important one. And as far as what your responsibilities are to the mission, the country, and those that are in your platoon. And our son was born, and my wife knew right away that something was off. And she couldn't quite put her finger on it, but at an eighth month checkup, the doctors were like, okay, we're not sure what's going on here, but he's not meeting these milestones, and we need to look into this. And that sent us on a 7-year journey to try to figure out what was going on. No one could figure it out. Military doctors couldn't figure it out. We, on our own, we went up to Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles and talked to specialists up there and did tests, and they couldn't figure it out. My wife did most of this while I was gone. Yeah. She did a whole bunch of the oxygen chamber therapies and all that sort of thing, non-traditional type stuff. Just trying to do anything we possibly could to try to figure out what was going on, and two, to give him the best chance of reaching his full potential, whatever that could be. We can't figure anything out, which is very difficult.
That has to
mostly
be
on
huge
mostly
frustration
on my wife. Yeah. And it was around, let's see, when was it? It was December of I might get this date off by 1 year, 2013, I want to say, that we got a call from someone who sounded like Dana Carvey impersonating Ross Perot back on Saturday Night Live in the 90s. And they say, this is Ross Perot. I'm like, what? Hello, Mr. Perot. And he starts talking and says, hey, we're gonna fix your son. I'm sending the G550 tomorrow to pick you up, and we're gonna fly you out here to Texas, and I'll assemble a team of doctors, and we're gonna figure this out. And then he hangs up, and I'm like, wow. What just happened there? That was wild. And then about an hour later, his lead doctor calls from Southwestern Medical Center outside of Dallas and says, hey, I know Mr. Perot called and said that we're sending the jet tomorrow, but why don't we do this? Why don't you send me everything you have on your son from all the specialists you've seen, all the military doctors, and let me take a look at it. Then we will assemble a team of genetic specialists here at Southwestern Medical Center, and then we'll send the jet. We'll fly you guys in and see what we can do. And I said, wow, amazing. Okay, get ready. Inbound. So sent them all the stuff, and sure enough, they took a look at it all, and they assembled a team of genetic specialists and sent the G550 out, and on we went with our son. And they had a nurse on board to help with him on the flight, and landed right there and outside of Dallas, and then we spent a week there doing tests. And they sent our blood all around the world as part of one of those tests, and they eventually found a couple months later a researcher in the Netherlands who had just found a genetic mutation of the NR2F1 gene, which is a gene that helps form the brain. And that is what it was. So being able to, it now has a name named after the four doctors who discovered this, but it's a very long four names, so I don't want to mess up the pronunciation. But because we found it, or before it actually had an official name, to me it's always just NR2F1, and so being able to put that name to it, and just know what it was, know it wasn't anyone's fault, it was just one of those crazy things that happens, really helped us, my wife in particular, being able to put that name to it. And it was like, all right, we got a name to it, we know what it was, know what happened, and off we go. And so so I'll never be able to repay Ross Perot for that. And sadly, he passed away this last year. Yeah. But I visited him last year on the book tour and went to say hello. And he still had a picture of our son on his desk. And just an amazing man who I'll never be able to thank, or just amazing, just incredible. And I heard that he did that for not just our family. He did that for a lot of military families behind the scenes with no recognition ever. So just a great man. So that's kind of how that went down.
So how many kids have this? I mean, how common is this disability?
Yeah, so he was the 13th they ever found in the world.
Oh my goodness!
At last check, there was close to. I'm guessing now it's up 100, or a little over 100, I would guess. But we don't follow it too closely. We're all in every day, just taking care of him, and by we I mean mostly my wife. Yeah. Actually. Most all of my wife, because he needs 24/7 care forever. And actually, in writing the second novel, I didn't mean for this to happen, but it wove its way into the storyline, and it was not part of the outline. Wasn't part of the one-page synopsis that I write before I kick things off. Was never going to mention it in a book. Had no intention of doing that, and then it just naturally found its way in there for one of the characters. So it's actually in the second novel, which is crazy.
So I have a son with special needs too, and I'm pretty open about that. I've talked about it a lot. And I remember when we finally got it figured out what the deal was with him. He has autism, and I remember when we were talking about having kids, and we had all these plans and what our life was going to look like with kids in the future and the whole thing. And then when we found out one of our kids has special needs, is non-typical, then all these new questions come in of, well, this wasn't what we were planning, and this is going to have really big implications on not just the rest of our lives, me and my wife's life, his life. There's new layers of concern, new layers of worry. Did you go through that phase of thinking through that?
Oh yeah. We think about that all the time. We thought about it a lot back then when we were first figuring all this out. But for me, it's one of those things, like, it makes us a stronger, more compassionate, loving family. And for his brother and sister, so he's right in the middle. Mm-hmm. It's their normal. They haven't known anything else. He wasn't like in a car accident or something like that, where all of a sudden something changed. He's just their brother, and they're gonna need to, they have to take care of him really forever. But for me, one of the main things that I think about is funding his special needs trust, so that if I go out and get hit by a bus, I know that financial burden of caring for him is not going to fall on the shoulders of his brother and sister as they get older. So that's one of the main goals that I have going forward here. But it's a crazy road. And luckily we're in a place where a community that is very accepting and has a great special needs program at the school. He has a one-on-one aide there. And that's one of the main reasons we ended up here in Park City. Utah, is because there's something called the National Ability Center, which is right down the street. And they take people of all abilities and disabilities and get them outside and help them reach their full potential through outdoor recreation. And it's an amazing facility. They have horseback riding there. They ski. They get water skis, they go river rafting, bikes, ropes course. They have all these amazing things that they do. And they also do a lot with veterans, a lot of veterans dealing with TBI, PTSD. They bring them, their families in, get them outside together, help kind of heal some of those scars, some of those wounds through outdoor activities. But that's one of the main reasons that we came here. Without that, we might be somewhere else. But also this is a big place for people to training for the Olympics, Special Olympics as well. So it's a very welcoming community for those with disabilities and special needs. So we feel very fortunate that we're here.
You know, your training as a SEAL, your experience as a SEAL, there's a mission, you plan it out and you execute. And I'm probably oversimplifying it, so forgive me. You find out your kid has special needs. Is there a system your mind goes through, like from your SEAL training, that's either equipped you for this or prepared you better for this? Were you able to be more systematic about it? Was it harder to feel the emotion of it because maybe you thought more systematically about it? Like, did it help you or hinder you, given that huge, obviously, foundation of training, of executing missions and problem solving? And what was that like?
Yeah, so it's I don't think it's necessarily the SEAL training per se. I think it's just my I guess background, which a huge part of that is SEAL training and real world experience downrange, but just everything else in life that makes us who we are up to whatever point something hits us like this. So, and I think being a male, that I think it's more in that because of that I looked at it more logically. I think than maybe my wife did. In that I was like, okay, we have this issue. We can't quote unquote fix it, but how do we move forward with it? What are the things that I need to do? And how do we help him reach his full potential? And just kind of like more systematic, more of like a list, and obviously feeling the emotion. It's not that you didn't feel the emotion of it, but it's like, okay, also, in addition to feeling these emotions and to figuring that piece out, I also have these other things that we need to deal with, like how we're going to care for him, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And in the future,
and who's going to care for him?
Exactly. Long
that's
term.
Been a hard thing. Not even just long term, but short term. If I want to go on a date with my wife and our friends are like, oh yeah, just get a sitter. We can't just get a sitter. Right. It's more complicated than that for our family.
Exactly. It's very tough to be spontaneous when you're dealing with something like this.
Yeah.
Which is tough because, someone just like the exact example you just gave. Hey, we're going to dinner tonight. So-and-so is getting together. And you know what? You can't do that unless you just randomly happen to have a sitter lined up, and finding that right person. It's not just the local person down the neighbor who is like 16 or 17 and can make a couple bucks or whatever. No, they have a lot to deal with if they're working with our middle child. So it can't just be any sitter. So it does add some layers of complexity to just going out to dinner, or for my wife going to, or I shouldn't say that. My wife does most of the shopping, is why I said even for my wife to go to the grocery store, but I go to every now and again.
Yeah. But, I go to, and I end up spending more money than I'm supposed to.
Oh, I'm the worst at that. Yeah, I just throwing stuff in, and that looks good.
Yeah. So and I want to make dinner. And the best thing to make for dinner is thick ribeyes, of course. So let's just do that. And that's not on the list, but so I'm in the same place you are.
Even worse than that though is when I go with one of the kids. Two of the kids to the grocery store, and we go down the aisles together. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst at saying no. So we come back with Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms and all sorts of stuff that we shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that. But I know it'll make my kids so happy, and this is. Exactly. Oreos make kids happy. and that's a
plus
good
they're
thing.
good. So I was just finishing up edits on book 3 the last couple weeks here, and oh my gosh, I dove into those Lucky Charms. Those things are delicious. Oh my gosh, crazy!
I know.
So I was very thankful that I had them at the hand.
When you eat Lucky Charms, do you just, spoonful after spoonful, or do you separate as much as you can the marshmallows to kind of save them for the end?
I go all in. Yeah, I take them all. But you always want to get a marshmallow in there with the other stuff.
Yeah,
so you got to balance it out.
I like to eat as much as I can of just the normal cereal, so that I can save as many of the marshmallows. Just have spoonfuls of marshmallows at the end. It's just,
solid technique.
Yeah,
solid.
It's just incredible stuff. For your son, have you had those kind of moments with people who may not completely understand the implications of this on your family, and have had awkward conversations of, my kid with autism, sometimes he will spin around in circles, and that's not a typical thing to do. Typical kids don't do that. And they're kind of looking at him like, what's he doing? And you have to explain, well, that this is part of his special need. It's just the reality of things, and let's just talk about it instead of acting like it's not happening. Have you ever had to have those kind of conversations with people on your son's behalf, so that everyone was just kind of in the loop with what's happening, or maybe it was a little uncomfortable, but anything like that?
Right. So with our little guy, it's a global developmental disability. So it's physical, it's mental, it's all of these things. So he doesn't look like I guess a typical person his age would. So it's very obvious right off the bat that it's if he lies down in the parking lot and starts to scream or something like that on the way into school, like it's very obvious that he's not just a normal kid throwing a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
And you can't really stop and explain, because you have to be full hands-on with him all the time. So so there's really no time or opportunity to do that. But it's also very obvious to somebody walking by. It's like, oh yeah, I see what's going on here. It's not just a kid acting up. Like there's obviously some serious things going on. But he's a sweet little guy, But he does have those type of things. But he's very, very sweet, very loving. He can say a few words, he kind of trips and falls and stumbles around and all that stuff. But he's and you got to be right there for him for everything, feeding and for everything. But yeah, so we're fortunate in that he's a sweet little guy. And we have some great people out here that work with him, that allow us to run to the grocery store, or that take the other kids somewhere, go to the other kids' lacrosse game, or go watch the other kids ski, or whatever it is. So we're very fortunate that we have a community that is one, so accepting, and two, a lot of people here that work for that National Ability Center. Mm-hmm. They can come work for us on the weekends and that sort of thing, that also love our middle child. So we're very fortunate in that respect, and that he's for them who've spent so much time with special needs kids, to work with him and have him be so sweet is very helpful.
Do you find it easy to advocate for him with the local schools, or whatever else he's involved in? Is advocating a difficult thing? It sounds like the area you're living in obviously is more equipped for special needs kids, but what has advocating for him looked like through different situations?
Right. So where we are right now here in Park City, it's amazing. San Diego is a different story, and my wife did almost all of that, and that was very difficult. They were just not equipped, didn't have the right people, who weren't there for the right reasons. And that's a broad generalization there, of course, because there were outliers here and there who were just fantastic. But for the most part, when we look back on dealing with the school district with him there, it was, oh my gosh, it was horrible. Here, 180 out from that, it is amazing. So my wife does not have to go in and make these cases and advocate and then talk to attorneys or anything like that. Like, they are ready to go, ready to help. Everybody's absolutely amazing, from senior administration on down to the people, the one-on-one aides. You could not be better people, more accepting and helpful. Just they're great. So we have had to deal with it, to answer your question, in the past. We don't have to deal with it today, thank goodness.
That is the hardest thing, the most difficult thing, is the advocating when you feel like you're just talking to a wall. You're not getting anything through. Geez.
Yep. And my wife did most of that, and anyway, so that was very difficult on her, and but she did a fantastic job at it. She's a fierce advocate, but being here and not having to do that really anymore is a huge weight off our shoulders.
I've heard you talk about this really being your new mission now. What kinds of things, you talk about moving as being a big change. Are there other things you'd point to that you'd say, the things we're doing things differently as a family now in light of caring for and giving the best life for our middle child?
Oh yeah, it's everything we do is different. But I would say it gives us direction. It gives us focus. It makes us a more loving, compassionate family, tighter as a team. But the real trick is figuring out how not to how to raise him to reach his full potential, but how to have our other kids' lives not solely defined by their brother's condition. So when they look back on their childhoods, the first thing they think of is not how they were neglected because we were just so hands-on and doing things for our middle child constantly. So that is really in the forefront of my mind each and every day, each and every second of every day. And I want to make sure that we're not paying attention, but that we are present and involved and devoted to making this situation work the best we can. I mean, these are the cards that we're dealt. We're dealt these cards as a family, and it's up to us how we're going to play those cards. And I just want to make sure that the other kids don't look back. And of course, it's a huge part of their childhood. It's going to make them who they are, and hopefully, it's going to make them more loving, compassionate citizens of this country. But I don't want their childhood to be solely defined by their brother's condition, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense to me.
We're just a family. There's really no normal, quote unquote. This is our family. These are our cards. This is how we're playing them, and we're doing the best we can. And hopefully, the other kids will look back and be like, "Wow, look what mom and dad did." Now that when they're older, and say, "Wow, how did they do that? That's amazing. If they did it, you know what? I can do it. I can deal with this adversity, whatever it is in their lives, because we're all going to face adversity at some point along the way. If you haven't, you will." For them to look back and say, "Wow, look what they did. Look how they raised us. Look how they built this family and forged ahead on this path together. Wow, if they did that, you know what I can do, or if they did that, this little thing this happened to me, that's really not a big deal." Kind of like how I thought of the guys storming the beaches at Normandy when I was in Buds. Kind of put things in perspective and said, you know what? Okay, if they did that, guess what? I can swim. I can get through this next evolution at Buds here and move on to the next phase. So hopefully it'll be the same for our kids when they look back, and hopefully it'll make them stronger people.
I think every parent wants that if they have multiple kids and one of them is not typical. Were there times that you look back when they were young and say, "Oh man, we're not nailing it," and you made a course correction in your parenting style or in just how you handled things in order to ensure that goal? I think for a lot of people listening who have a kid with special needs and who have other typical kids, they want that, but they're trying to figure out for the first time, what are some of the specific things that you've done to allow for that kind of outcome that you're describing?
Right. I think it was a lot of small course corrections along the way. So we're constantly adapting, just like on the battlefield. We're always adapting to the enemy. The enemy's always adapting to us. Typically, who comes out on top is the person who can adapt faster, the element, the organization who can adapt faster on the battlefield. So same thing here. We're constantly adapting. We're constantly learning, constantly making small course corrections. I didn't all of a sudden get 10 years into it and say, "Oh, you know what? I should probably do something different so that our other kids' childhoods aren't defined by this." No, it was from the very beginning. That was at the forefront of my mind. And adapting, learning as we went along was a constant. So I think we're fortunate, I guess, in that respect. So we didn't get to some huge tipping point and say, "Oh my gosh, we need a change," because we were always changing, always adapting, always trying to do it better, always looking at everything that we did and bringing those lessons learned, kind of like you would after a mission. You come back and you do a hot wash. You talk about what went right, what went wrong, how you can do it better next time. Same thing here. But it's just a constant. It's just a part of who we are now. It's not okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to review this and then we're going to get the lessons learned and then we're going to move forward. No, we're adapting constantly as we're moving. So it's just a part of our lives now. And it might sound exhausting, I guess, when I explain it like that, but it's really not. I mean, everything's exhausting, right? I'm in a constant state of exhaustion around here. It's constant chaos. I don't want people to think that, hey, I've got this figured out. This is just our path. We're constantly evolving. I think that was important for us, for our particular situation, because it allowed us to make those smaller course corrections as we went. And I think that was extremely, extremely helpful and made things go smoother, I guess, in a very, in a situation you wouldn't pick if you were given the option. But we didn't get to pick. And like I said, those are the cards that were dealt. So we got to adapt, got to play them, got to do it the best we can for all those that are involved, and hopefully turn it into something. It's weird to say a positive because it's extremely difficult, but you have to do the best you can with what you have. And that's what we're trying to do. So those were kind of some of my thoughts as we started down this path, and those thoughts have stayed at the forefront of my mind as we've continued along this journey, because that's what it is. It's a journey, and we got to do it. We got to adapt every single day. We got to try to do it better every single day. And that's not just with a special needs child. That's with my writing. That was in the SEAL teams. I always wanted to do it better today than I did it yesterday. And I always wanted to pass my lessons learned to those coming up behind me so they could do it better than I did it. So I guess it's just a normal part of life. So I don't think of it in terms of, okay, I'm going to write this list down and this is how I'm going to do things. It's just, I don't have time for things like that. I got to move. This thing is a full on sprint. And by thing, I mean life in general.
There's just so many people who need to hear that, because for those who are trying to figure it out, they don't have a plan, or they think they need to have a list or a plan. I think hearing that is really liberating, because one, it's honest. And two, it gives them space to make mistakes, and it doesn't need to be this huge sweeping change, but these little changes, little course corrections along the way. I mean, that's what I've experienced, me and my wife experienced with our son. And that's a really liberating thing, not to have it all figured out the perfect way the first time or the second time.
Oh yeah, no, you're going to make mistakes along the way, of course, and then you're going to have successes. But you're going to look at both those things and figure out how to do it better next time, or how to do it better going forward. So I never really looked at something as a mistake or a success. It was just kind of a what we did and how could we do it better next time. That's it's really as simple as that. But it is exhausting. And it's more exhausting for my wife than to me, because I leave on a 2-week book tour, and I'm going and I'm shaking hands and signing books and doing my thing. And the SEAL teams, bam, I went off on a training trip, or I went on a deployment, that sort of thing. And she's always here taking care of him and the other kids as well. So it's exhausting for all of us, but in particular, it's tough on her, I'd say, but she's been absolutely incredible, and she's kind of inspiration to me, inspiration to everybody that knows her. When they say, "Wow, look at what this person is doing. How does she do it?" And I think people ask themselves that question quite a bit when they see how she juggles all this.
Yeah, the same thing with my wife, and I love making a big deal about my wife, and it obviously sounds like you do too, because I could not do what I do without her, and she really is carrying the load. When I'm going around recording shows with people and doing the podcast and enjoying interviews and conversations with interesting people, she's the one who a lot of times is sticking around getting it all done, and that's a huge. I just couldn't do it without her.
Yep. No, exactly. So I feel very fortunate each and every day that she's here, and that we're a team and a family, and I'll tell you, it certainly helps when the other kids are well behaved, though.
Oh yeah.
When you're dealing with our middle one and one of the other ones, has an issue of some sort, it's like, oh my gosh, all right, this is a little too much.
Well, I have a 4-year-old, and so my kids are 4 and 3, and I just picked up my 3-year-old from preschool the other day and asked, how is everything going? And I come to find out that he has been causing a lot of trouble at preschool. I don't know why they didn't tell us this before. Causing trouble, kicking blocks, which is like a Class A misdemeanor in preschool. If you're kicking blocks, you're getting blackballed big time. And he has to sit in the back of the carpet because he just will randomly start breakdancing. Essentially, is what it looks like. He'll just randomly just start dancing around, throwing his legs in the air, which is hilarious to me. I laugh, but when there's kids around, I guess he kicks other kids by accident, not on purpose, but by accident. And so the behavior thing, we've been working to get that under control right now, and it's been intense with a 3-year-old.
Yeah, no, my goodness, yeah. When one of the other ones starts acting up, it makes things exponentially more difficult. Ugh. But hey, you know what? That's life. That's how it goes, and that's kind of how I keep looking at things. Like it's there's there's adversity on the way that's built into the program, and if you accept that's going to be the case, then when things pop up, then it's not. Don't let it be a surprise, I guess is the best way to put it. When things don't go your way, because that's just life, and your job is to adapt and figure it out. Yeah. And that's where you find out your character, your true character is, and those around you find out what your true character is when they see and you see how you respond to adversity. So that's the test, and it's all part of life.
So I'm a big fan of your book. I have the True Believer. When does book number 3 come out? Has a date been set for it yet?
It is coming out April 14th. Pending the Department of Defense review, so we shall see. They're not big readers over there at the DoD. If the last time is any indication, but
so we'll just look to maybe next October then for the
really
next
hope
book.
It comes out in April, because the second and third order effects of it not coming out on publication day financially are huge.
Really?
So you look at it like a movie. So movie studios don't put two movies from the same studio out at the same time. They have competition, of course. Yeah. From other studios. They don't compete with themselves. And they look at what's coming out from what they have coming out, what other studios have coming out, what they look at past performance of movies at certain times. They look at holidays. They look at all of those things come into play. And it's no different in publishing. They look at all those things, and then they pick the optimal time for your particular book in your particular genre at the stage you are at in your in the profession to maximize maximize the success of that project, of the book. So when the DoD just can't get it done as per the contract that I signed, which was they will get back to you in a time, and this is quote unquote, not to exceed 30 days. So that's what those of us that signed the TSSCI paperwork in the military, that's what it says. So I am fulfilling my side of the bargain, and guess who's not fulfilling their side?
Yes, that's right.
Here. Shocker, yeah. The U.S. government. So, but it's crazy. Like some of the things they took out of the novel are things that I heard yesterday all day talking about the al-Baghdadi operation in Syria, and I heard them from people that also had TSSCI clearances that were much higher ranking than me, who are now on cable news networks talking about said real world operations. Yet in a work of fiction where it's completely made up, they see fit to black out these same words. So it's kind of crazy and it's frustrating. But once again, you know what? That's life. It is life. You just got to deal with it and figure out how to maximize it. So that's why I keep the redactions in the novels, keep them blacked out in there, because I think it's interesting for people to try to figure out what the government took out or what they thought was so secret, and also adds a little authenticity to it, a little credibility to it. So you got to try to maximize it, got to adapt and move forward. So that's what it's all about.
Just wrapping up, you mentioned the al-Baghdadi we took them out. Essentially, our guys went in there and took care of business, and which is great, by the way. You obviously see missions like that from the other side. how does a mission like that? Here's my question. You don't give away anything top secret, although you're more than welcome to, of course. How does a mission like that, have so many moving parts, still stay so secret that nothing leaks out, nothing gets out? I mean, that is a huge endeavor. How does that happen?
Right. And I think this is why not that many people in Congress were notified.
Yeah, it's probably a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah, actually a great, one of my favorite novels in the genre is Term Limits by Vince Flynn, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And Kyle Mills is continuing the Mitch Rapp series, though. But Term Limits is about that very thing. Is about a mission that was leaked, and one of the guys in charge of that mission then essentially goes on a rampage with an outcome in mind. So it's a very well written and thoughtful book. And I met Vince Flynn before he passed away, and I asked him, "Hey, do you ever wake up in the morning and think that you're gonna, at the time, a newspaper? You're gonna look at the newspaper and see that somebody was inspired by Term Limits and actually kind of used it as a blueprint for exactly what you talk about in the book?" And he said, "Every day." Which is pretty cool. And he said, "What an amazing guy," and a great book. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that is a very legitimate concern, especially something that was in the works for so long, that has so many moving parts. And then let's not even talk about our Congress or everybody in our government. In this case, we had multiple other countries helping us out, and not even countries, other elements that aren't even part of those countries helping us out on the intelligence side, where we're going to launch from support-wise. So there were a lot of moving parts in this one, and I see just what you see. I'm just catching the news as I'm, juggling everything else in life here. Kind of out of my peripheral vision as I walk through the living room, but. Yeah, this one had a lot of moving parts in the works for a while, and yeah, they knocked it out of the park, and they all made it home. So what I think about when I see the sunset here, I know that's coming up on another side of the world where there's guys and men and women downrange that are either getting back from a mission or about to go on one, giving me the freedoms and opportunities to be here, raising my family. So I like to always give them a nod each time the sun goes down here in this country. But the other day, it's amazing everybody made it back okay, and that they took care of business. It was a good day for freedom.
It blows me away that after a big mission like that, these guys aren't coming back and going on late night talk shows and having their face in the newspaper. Somebody wins a bronze medal in the Olympics and they're cashing in for all they can. But these guys are legitimately life on the line, doing big things, accomplishing huge missions, pretty much with total anonymity. Why is that? Why is it that they don't seek any kind of recognition truly for the great things they're doing?
Well, in this particular case, it obviously happened 2 days ago. But I think they also learned from some other missions where people have come back and done a little bit of that. So I think in this case, you won't see that because of what's happened in the past. But it's these guys each and every night. It's not just 2 nights ago for this mission. The night before that, they were probably doing something. The night before that, and last night they probably went out again. And tonight they're probably getting ready to go out again. So it's going on downrange all the time. So it's not just these big ones. And the big ones like this that hit the news. Well, the one tonight, guess what? It might not go as smooth. And the one 4 nights ago, it might not have gone that smooth. And the only time we hear about them is if there's a death, because the family has to be notified, that sort of thing. But there's way more close calls out there, and there are missions going on all the time that just don't make the news because they're going after someone that no one's ever heard of, but that is an intricate part, an essential part of the enemy threat network. So we just don't hear about it because they're doing it in the shadows.
Yeah. Except for the dog. The dog's famous.
The dog made it. They actually had to declassify the photo which
I feel like the sale of the
Department of Defense has declassified the dog photo, and they, someone of course made the little meme online and put the black face mask over the dog, which was great.
Oh, it's perfect.
And posted that. Yes, that was classic.
I feel like the sale of German Shepherds are going to go through the roof in the United States.
Was it a Malinois or a German Shepherd? I just glanced at it very quickly. I'm guessing it's a Malinois.
Well, I'm not a dog expert, so when I looked at it, I thought German Shepherd, but that's because I'm not a dog expert. So very well could have been a different kind of dog.
Right.
All right, wrapping up, we're almost done. Last time we talked, you mentioned that it was in the works for your book series to either become a TV show or a movie or something. Has there been any movement on that? Anything that you can share with us?
I cannot share anything. I'm sworn to secrecy. Still classified.
You know what?
Hasn't been declassified by the Department of Defense or by Hollywood yet.
I believe you. I will not push you. I'm going to lobby, though, that hopefully this dog would get a role, maybe some way. It actually would be great to see the dog in the show or movie when it does happen. But when it does happen, I want to have you back on. I want to talk about that when the time comes.
Let's do it. No, I'd love to. And Savage Son that I'm working on and waiting for the DoD to get back to me on has a very significant dog portion to it. So I'm super excited about that. And so if they ever make a movie or a show on book 3, Savage Son, then you'll get some good dog action in there. That's all it's all legit. It's all working with dogs is amazing. And I have some dear friends that are now out doing it on the outside, continuing to train dogs, both for military and law enforcement, and also service dogs. A friend of mine is training actually a dog for us for our middle child, a service dog for him.
No way.
Is trained just to I don't know how he'd ever wander out because there's someone on him at every second, but it's trained just to track him. And if he's ever to leave, to bark. So our son can lean on him. Also, he has a little handle on it. My friend John Devine with Divine Canines. And he's also a part of a co-founder of an organization called Rescue 22. And 22 designates the 22 veterans that take their own lives each and every day in this country. And Rescue 22 is their niche in the world of foundations is to use dogs, emotional support dogs, service dogs for veterans to stem that tide of veteran suicide. So, and actually I wove that into the storyline of book 3 as well. So I'm trying to do everything I can to, on the outside here to help people and to help organizations that do good work here on the outside. So book 3, very dog centric for all the dog fans out there.
Can't wait. Jack, you are always so generous with your time. Thanks for spending time with us today on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, we will. I'll talk to you later, Jack. So there you go. Episode 1 with Jack Carr. 2 more to go today, releasing 3 all at once. Really pumped for that. So I hope you're having a great day. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And we'll see you later. This is the Justin Herman Show.